Hello, hello, and welcome to Decaf, a production of the Beacon Center of Tennessee. It is 2023, and your favorite co-hosts are back with new energy. I don't know about you, Mark, but it did me well to have some days off there at the end of the year because I feel rested, and I still have if you're watching this instead of listening, you can see I still have my disco balls hung up from New Year's Eve. Our Christmas tree's still up. I'm not ready to let go yet. But Mark, how was your Christmas? Are you still in the spirit, not ready to let go, or are you ready to move on into spring?
I'm good. And I actually really I think some people disagree, but I really like the New Year's kind of like resolution type stuff. Like I know some people are like, oh, it's stupid. But for me, it's always good to have like a starting point to be like that's why I'm like, oh, I ate horrible this weekend. I'll wait till Monday to start. But like, it's always good to have that. So I've been, it's only been 5 days in, but I've been honoring my New Year's resolution so far and, walking more and doing more healthy stuff. So I like it. Christmas is great. I'm excited for next year again, but I'm moving on. I'm happy and I'm trying to, be an improved version of Mark.
A better Mark. Hey, I'm down for a better Mark. Let's go. That's kind of mean. Maybe this Mark, maybe 2023 Mark won't insult me as much.
That's not part of my.
I don't think that's part of your resolution at all. Well, one of the exciting things about the start of the year means the beginning of the legislative session, which means that our lives amp up and get kind of crazy. But it's good for Tennesseans because now you get to, if you choose to, see kind of how things work. And as they say in politics, how the sausage gets made. And if you're paying attention, which I beg all of you to pay attention to Tennessee politics and what's going on. But one of the things that we just released today on the day of recording, maybe not the day you're listening, is a report by our Entrepreneurship and Innovation Council to give recommendations to not only the legislature, but also the governor's office on what we can do to make Tennessee the most innovation-friendly state in the entire country. Now, let me explain this Entrepreneurship and Innovation Council because it's something we've never done before. But we saw an opportunity to bring together some of the greatest minds in tech and innovation and entrepreneurship to come together and offer recommendations in several different areas in ways that Tennessee can improve. Our council met all through last year, and they ended with this report that is on our website. You'll see it if you go to our homepage about making Tennessee so innovation friendly that that's what we're known for. And I thought it was a really cool model. Ron in our office thought this up, made it all happen. And we released a report today with recommendations on things like blockchain, which is something that think tanks aren't really, generally speaking, talking about. And a lot of people, I think mostly in the South, correct me if you think I'm wrong, Mark, aside from Miami, which I don't count as like the South, but a lot of different geographic areas of the country are outpacing us on blockchain, but it's something that Tennessee can really get behind. Also, innovation in healthcare. We saw during COVID, it drew out places where we need to be more innovative in healthcare with telemedicine and allowing practitioners to practice. I thought it was a really cool report and really cool recommendations. And I don't know about you, Mark, but I really hope that the legislature takes a strong, hard look at this going into this session and the next for things that we can do to outpace our neighbors in the Southeast and maybe even outpace states all over the country.
Well, which was cool too, is you have a couple of recommendations that, are you're talking about blockchain, things like that, which are, maybe a little bit more technical and maybe a little bit more niche. But then there's just general ones, which just makes our state better for everyone. We're talking about barriers to entry for starting a business,
yes.
Taxes, like you said, healthcare. So it's kind of got a little bit for everyone in there. And, and that's, we talk about, places like California, which are, they have, the Silicon Valley, all the tech stuff.
Sure.
But some of these other recommendations, which, might not be as tech heavy, but they matter a lot, like taxes. Those are the ways we're going to get people to come here. It's not just having, blockchain technology, which is great, but it's these just general things that why everybody comes here, being able to start a business easily, taxes, a choice of healthcare options. So I think it's really cool for that. And like, Justin says this a lot, and I think that it's one of Beacon's main goals is that we don't want to be making policy from like an ivory tower. We want the people who it actually affects to help come up with it. And that's what this was. This was not, Ron, who's a super smart policy guy, but maybe doesn't, isn't somebody who's doing this day in and day out and having it affect their lives. kind of come up with some of these suggestions. And, Ron can help on the policy way, but it's just cool to have these people who this legislation or these things actually affect on a day-to-day basis kind of come up with, like, this is what affects us. It's not what some think tank thinks affect us. This is exactly what affects us, hearing it from the horse's mouth rather than us kind of, assuming or thinking that, but it's hearing it from the people it's actually affecting.
Well, one of the recommendations on there revolves around the business tax, which, as someone who has never owned a business, that's not my thing. I wasn't aware of it. Ron definitely was, but I wasn't aware of what the business tax is and how it affects small business owners, large business owners, accountants who are trying to help these businesses get their act together for the IRS. I wasn't aware of this. And that was one of the things I got to listen in on a lot of the E&I Council meetings because I do logistics. And so I was listening into these meetings, and when they brought up the business tax, I didn't know what they were talking about. And so I had to have Ron give me a refresher on it. And, we like to think that in the think tank world, we can talk about taxes and we can talk about how lowering taxes will really help people, but it's not until we hear from the people who are genuinely affected by these things that we realize, oh, this small tax is actually a massive problem that's hurting people. And that, to me, was one of the coolest recommendations that came out of this, because it's something that is affecting everyone that no one's really talking about. So I'm really thankful that we did this.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things is we tend to think about these taxes. We say, okay, well, it affects these big businesses. So, of course, because it affects these big businesses, it affects, workers, small businesses, because it just doesn't affect. But these taxes actually directly affect small businesses and LLCs and people just starting their own companies. So it's not like, oh, it affects them. So, it almost, I don't want to say trickles down, but it also affects other people, because if the economy's not good or the big businesses are paying more taxes, that's not great for the economy. But this is very direct taxes that affect small business and entrepreneurs. So it's not like it affects them through this and this. It's like it affects them directly. So it was a really cool report. And I think you got to give credit to Ron. It's a really cool concept to have this. And I think that we're doing more of that. I mean, we had our listening tour where we really listened to what the people in Tennessee care about. And we're going to kind of base our agenda around some of those things. So I just think it's a really cool step that Beacon's taking to not just, come up with policy that we think is important, but we want to come up with policy that's free market and is adheres to our principles, but also that affects people and that, the people are thinking about on a daily basis, not something they might say, oh, yeah, I agree with this, but this is the 80th, policy on my list. It's like, these are the ones that affect you the most. And because of that, we're doing things like housing and things like that this year, which we hadn't done previously, because that's what's affecting people.
Yes. Amen. We're out here changing lives in the way that they need to be changed, honey. I agree with that. So that's my pro for the week. If we're doing like pro con, is the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Council report, because that was awesome. Con is the fact that everyone in the country, if at least everyone in our way of thinking, has their eyes on the speaker's race in the U.S. House of Representatives, and it is messy. And I mean messy, like Bachelor in Paradise drama messy. Like, dude, this is, I don't know if that's a popular take, but that's my take. This is messy. Mark, and I will say before we get into this, by the time that you are listening to this podcast, it could all be resolved. But it's been going on for so many days that I'm not holding my breath, but it could all be resolved. I actually saw a tweet from Reddit College Football that said if the speaker race goes into a third vote, they do 2-point conversions until there's a winner, or like goes into a third overtime, there's 2-point conversions until there's a winner. I was like, this is how crazy things are right now. Bachelor in Paradise crazy. Mark, give us a little insight into what's going on, and then we can give maybe some more hot takes, because I got a lot of them.
It's just kind of a crazy situation. And like, from somebody who loves sports, I just like watching it. I mean, it's just, there's a lot, like you said, it's kind of a combination of like sports and The Bachelor. And it's just, the Republicans won the House, right? So they have, but not by a lot. They only have a couple extra votes to get the speaker. You get 218 votes, and they cannot get there because there's a pretty large contingent,
substantial,
about 20 people who are saying, I am not going to vote for Kevin McCarthy for speaker. And And because of that, this is, I think the fifth vote has already gone. So they're going to do the sixth vote today. And nothing has really changed. I think a few people have defected from McCarthy to somebody else, but really it's just kind of been a small amount of votes that have moved. And I've never seen this before. And not only that, I don't know what's going to happen if they don't get a speaker. I think in some ways we would love it because, like, well, maybe the government just won't run for a while and we could save some money.
They aren't spending that money, honey. That was one of my hot takes.
But it's just a crazy situation. And it's just from a, again, not talking about from the politics or what I think side, but like, it is not ever smart to hold a vote like that unless you know you had the votes. Like, Kevin McCarthy should have known he had the votes or didn't. And it seems like he's trying to do all this deal making now to be the speaker. And he's actually apparently talking about deals with both, I think, a lot of the Freedom Caucus members as the 20 people that voted for him, but also with the Democrats to try to figure out a way to get there. And if a couple of them just abstain, that he can get there, I guess. But it's this crazy situation. It's like all these things should have been done beforehand. And I guess he felt more confident than he should have, because this is truly, outside of everything else, it does not make him look good. It's kind of embarrassing that he can't get these people. One vote, fine. Second vote, that's when it starts to get dicey. Now we're like fifth vote. It's like you cannot control the members of your own caucus.
No, that's what I think is wild. And it's funny that you bring that up. When I was interning in DC, he was the whip. He was the Republican whip. And he spoke to a large contingent of interns one day talking about whipping votes and not letting something go to a vote until you know that you have whipped the votes you needed to get it across the finish line. And I'm like, dude, in 2013, my little green college junior self was listening to you, hanging on every word, listening to you talk about whipping votes. And now you're on the sixth vote on a vote for yourself, not even like legislation. This is a you thing. And we're not getting the votes. I mean, it truly is drama. I can't wait for, and he was talking about meeting with the producers of House of Cards because the House of Cards was like in its first season when I was interning there, and telling them kind of the mechanics of it. And then it was fictionalized in House of Cards. I cannot wait. This is my toxic trait, as I see something catastrophic happening and I'm like, I can't wait for the Netflix special. I can't wait for there to be some kind of Netflix show about this specific situation, because it's going to be spicy.
It's funny you say that, because I didn't even think about it. I watched 3 episodes of House of Cards last night. I haven't seen like 3 because I think it wasn't like I thought of it. It was like, oh, I haven't seen that in a while. I think that this drama is what made me think of it. So like last night, I just watched 3 episodes of House of Cards again. And it's like, and it's even crazy because you have like Matt Gaetz, who's like a, very, very right Republican, talking to AOC on the floor. People are like, what are they talking about? Yes. It's like, basically, I guess the conversation was, are you guys going to save Kevin McCarthy? She said no. And it's just it's a wild time. I think overall, I don't know if it has a huge impact on the actual government. It doesn't make the Republicans seem like they have a consistent voice, though. I mean, every Democrat voted for Hakeem Jeffries, so they are all like in lockstep. And the Republicans seem like they're all over the place. And you even have kind of people who are normally they're maybe kind of on the fringes of the party who are arguing with each other. Like, I guess Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert are arguing. Like, they're kind of both pretty far right, and they're usually all together. Yeah. And it's just a lot of, but it doesn't really, I don't think, have any impact on, unless it goes on for a few more weeks. It doesn't have any impact on what's going to happen, but it does make, the Republican caucus look disorganized. And in the words of in the House of Cards, he's like the disorganized labor. It feels like it's the disorganized Republicans right now.
Yes, I feel like it doesn't really inspire confidence in government, because you've got all these people who are fighting for their specific wants and their specific needs, and the government can't function because 435 people are just fighting with each other over a person. I think it just doesn't inspire confidence. Another fun fact about House of Cards, though, before we move on, is, and I remember him saying this. Kevin McCarthy said that when he met with the producers of House of Cards, he said that his line for whipping votes was, vote your conscience, vote your party, don't surprise me. And they put that in the script as Frank Underwood's vote whipping line before they left his office: vote your conscience, vote your party, don't surprise me. So I thought that was really interesting. I mean, the man can inspire a massive line from a Netflix show, from one of the biggest Netflix shows in history, but he can't get the votes to be the speaker again. This is just a mess. And for me, at least, as jaded as I am at age 31, which is way more jaded than I should be. It's not inspiring much confidence in this Congress.
And what's interesting is also the Tennessee connection to this, because Andy Ogles is a big part of this.
Where are you going with this?
Kevin McCarthy came and did a fundraiser for Andy Ogles. They have a picture of Andy Ogles, Kevin McCarthy, and the gavel. And so Kevin McCarthy actually did a fundraiser for Andy Ogles. And then I don't know when it was. I think Andy Ogles originally voted for him, but then switched. I know he did Byron Daniels at some point. So there's a lot in Tennessee about what is happening. This guy came to the fundraiser for you, and I guess, with the gavel, and he voted against him for speaker. So I don't know, any of the details behind it, but it's just, and he's the only Tennessee representative who voted against him.
Like I said, this is some Bachelor in Paradise drama. Who will get the final rose? Tune in to C-SPAN, Fox News, CNBC, CNN to see.
And then there's what's going to happen next is is there going to be, and I actually you can bet on this on Predict It. So it's about
no way.
40. Yeah, it's basically saying Kevin McCarthy has about a 40% chance of winning this. They have Steve Scalise at 38%. So I guess that the idea is that if they have to come to an agreement, Steve Scalise could be the, I guess, compromise candidate with. I mean,
he is very popular.
Yeah, and then there's also there's ideas of Justin Amash being that if they come to a deal with the Democrats. So there's so many people, and he's at 1 cent, so nobody actually thinks it's going to happen.
Sure,
so I'm not sure people from either side really like him, but
I saw a tweet from a reporter that covers the Capitol Hill beat that said that Justin Amash was spotted in the speaker's lobby yesterday. So I was like, oh, it's getting spicy.
Yeah,
and real spicy.
And it's cool to see the predicted thing. So now Kevin McCarthy is now up to 53 cents. So it's so he's a slight favorite, and then Steve Scalise at 32 cents, and Elise Stefanik is at 5 cents. Donald Trump's at 3 cents. So it's just
the fact that he's even on there, questionable.
I know. Anything can happen, but it's just it's an interesting thing. And I think it's, people normally talk about how politics is boring and how C-SPAN is boring, and even people who are not into politics are like, what is going on here? It's just interesting for them to watch this.
Everybody loves messy because when we watch other people's messy, it makes us feel less messy. And that's on therapy. Okay, let's move on to sports really quick before we keep going on this, because I think you and I could keep going on this forever because it is so messy and it's so spicy. Let's talk about the college football playoffs. Listen, Alabama won our bowl game. I'm a happy girl. Sad to see Bryce Young and Will Anderson's last game. Happy that it went so well. I digress. Let's talk about shocking, TCU, dude. Okay, let me just say, shock of the century. I was stunned. Didn't even watch the game because I didn't think it'd be a fight. Shocked.
Yeah, I mean, I bet on TCU because I felt and I thought Michigan was good, but TCU has some players, and you never know with that. And again, Michigan played this incredible game, and I think that Michigan was my slight projection to win it all, but they played this great game against Ohio State, but they really have had some letdowns during the year. Illinois is the one that, even though they won, TCU's a good football team, and they can score points. And this vaunted Michigan defense, they just made it look like Swiss cheese. And of course, 2 pick sixes really helped. So, I mean, truly, I think if you look at it, I think Michigan was probably the better team, but TCU made enough plays to win. And I feel the same way.
That's why you play the game, baby.
That's right. And I felt like Ohio State was actually the better team instead of Georgia, but Georgia had a couple lucky plays, and, Ohio State's the best player in college football got hurt halfway through, and Georgia's able to pull it out. And there's something to be said about teams that win. It doesn't matter if you play the best game. You don't have to be the best team on the field if you win the game. So really, if you talk about who played the best or who's the best team, it should be Ohio State versus Michigan in the championship. But that is not what happens.
That's not
it's
what happens.
The teams that, and this, I think that game, the Georgia-Ohio State game, showed Georgia is very good. They are not the same Georgia from last year.
No.
I mean, remember, they were rolling everybody, and they lost to, obviously, Alabama once. But even that's the championship, they controlled that game. There was really no threat.
They beat us that game. They didn't just win. They beat us in that game.
And they beat Michigan the week before, too.
Yes, but in this Ohio State game, they didn't beat Ohio State. They simply won. And I know that sounds like kind of a crazy, if you're not a sports fan, that sounds like a crazy distinction that I always make. But there's a difference between beating a team and winning the game. And they simply did not beat Ohio State. They just won the game. And I saw a lot of funny things on Instagram, Georgia fans watching the game at midnight. And this one girl posted, this kicker will determine whether I get a midnight kiss or not from my boyfriend, because everyone was watching that last second of the game. Yeah. And if the Georgia boys got mad, they were going to be really, really mad. So congratulations to all you Georgia fans who had a happy new year after that. So sorry to the Buckeyes. I'm going to be honest. I know that people say that as SEC fans, we should go for the SEC teams. Not me, honey. Not me, no way. I was going for Ohio State in that game because I do not care for Georgia.
Well, I think I kind of understand the conference allegiance to some extent, but if anybody is cheering against TCU that's not an actual Georgia fan, there's something wrong with you. I don't want to be friends with you because if you're a Georgia fan, I get it, but I don't know if you know this, TCU was picked to finish 7th in their own conference before the season. They were unranked. This is I think the second unranked team ever to make the playoff, and they're the first unranked team to make the championship. This is a Cinderella story. They just lost their coach. This TCU team is actually like, it's insane what they're doing. I mean, they were supposed to maybe have a 500 record, and this team lost one game the whole year. They beating good teams, and it's just really exciting. And I think that, I'm not sure if this game's going to be close or not. I win about $3,300 if TCU pulls it off. I took them at 100-1 before the season.
Oh my gosh.
But, and I mean, I took a couple teams. So I'm not going to take credit like that's the only team I took. I took a couple 100-1 teams.
Sure. But I mean, honey, I'm going to be wearing purple.
Yes,
championship day.
But if you seriously, and I'm not trying, if you are not a Georgia fan and you're cheering for Georgia, I think you're a bad person. That's what I say. I don't think you believe in, all these things like these underdogs, this whole idea of this team that has just exceeded every expectation possible. They play hard. They play the right way. They got a bunch of 2-star recruits. Like, these are not highly recruited guys. None of these guys, not one of them probably got a scholarship from Georgia. So I think that this is a cool story. And truly, if you are not actually a Georgia fan and you're cheering for Georgia, I just don't want to be friends with you.
We can be friends because I will never cheer for Georgia until my dying day. So we can be friends. And
I think Tennessee fans are mostly on that page too. I think that there's but I think that there's like this idea where like, yeah, I'll cheer for some SEC teams, but TCU's this exception where like, if it was Ohio State, fine. I get why you cheer for Georgia, like Ohio State, Michigan even, but there's no reason to dislike TCU. Not one reason in the world. And there's no reason that you should like Georgia. So as somebody who's not a fan. And I know you hate Stetson Bennett, and apparently there's other people who are, I've seen a lot of arguments online. There's other people on your side. I thought your opinion's not as fringe as I thought it was.
It's not a fringe opinion.
Yeah,
he's a hateable guy. He's a very hateable guy. So that's my take on it. I wasn't for TCU at the beginning. I was like, I'm not going to cheer for someone who's going to lose. Now I'm like, okay, let's freaking go. I hope they roll over Georgia in the championship.
They opened up as 13.5-point underdogs, so people are not giving them much of a chance in that game. Yeah, but no, me neither. But it'll be interesting what happens, and I'm not going to bet because I already have so much on them anyway.
Yeah,
so much I could win, but it'll be interesting to see what that line does and which way it moves. But I could honestly see TCU winning by 3, or I could see Georgia winning by 31. It honestly can go either way.
I know.
If it's a close game, TCU has won those all year, so they have a shot. Now, I think if Georgia gets up by 2 touchdowns, it's over. But so TCU needs to keep it close early. I think it'll be fun. There's a lot of and congrats to the Tulane Green Wave. 2-10 last year.
Huge.
They finished at 11-2. They won me a bunch of money, but they are, they beat USC, who was going to be in the playoffs before the last game of the season. So honestly, that's the team of the year. Give all the credit to Tulane, and their quarterback, who was supposed to enter for the transfer portal, said, "I'm not going to enter the transfer portal. I want to come back because I think we can win a national championship next year." So
good for him. Good for him.
Go Tulane. Yeah,
go Green Wave. That's awesome. Before we go, there is a series on Peacock that has captivated almost our entire staff at Beacon. And it's shocking that we're all as into it as we are, but we are all so into this. And it is the Casey Anthony series where she finally speaks up. I think it's 11 years after. It's been like a month since I've watched it. It's 11 years after everything that happened with Kaylee Anthony. If you don't remember, let me take you back in time for 2 seconds. When I was in high school, I guess, this was like 2008. Was this like 2008, 2009, maybe 2011?
I thought it was
maybe it's later.
I thought it was before that.
Okay, maybe it was. But Kaylee Anthony, a little precious blonde girl, disappeared in Florida only to be found unalived and buried. And her mom went on trial for her murder and was found not guilty. Casey Anthony, since then, Casey the mom, has since kind of disappeared. There's no way you can get a normal life back after all that.
And also, before we do this, like, it was kind of a trial by media situation where there was pretty much no one who thought she was not guilty. I mean,
exactly.
Obviously the court ruled unanimously that she was not guilty, but every single person probably in the country thought she was guilty, and a lot of it was because of the media coverage of it.
I absolutely did. I remember I was a nanny the summer that the verdicts came out, and my kids were taking a nap, and I watched the verdict, and I called my mom, and I was like, what in the not guilty? This is another OJ situation. Like I was fully convinced that she was guilty. She just spoke out for the first time to Peacock on this docuseries, and she's one of those people, and I'd be interested to hear your take on this, Mark. She's one of those people where I don't know if she's telling the truth, but I was more inclined to believe her on this series because she finally got to speak out without people yelling at her. And my take is that her dad killed the little girl. That's my take. Mark, what is your take?
I think the important thing to think before we decide who did it is, what was the goal of the documentary? Because I think that matters. Because every documentary, every podcast with this new has a goal. There's not really this idea of, oh, this is nonpartisan. Like, they all have a side they're on. And this documentary was clearly on Casey Anthony's side. They wanted to make her look good. They wanted to give her the say. And they, and of course, some of the people who would have been against her didn't want to be interviewed for the documentary. But even the policemen and stuff, it was very clearly a pro Casey Anthony documentary.
Fair.
Doesn't mean I am truly I didn't really pay attention to this trial much when it happened. I didn't know the details. But it was good because I get to see it from a fresh perspective.
Yeah, this was my first foray into my true crime obsession, was Casey Anthony and Kaylee Anthony.
So if I'm betting, I think it's a complete 50-50 thing. And the thing is, either I think she's lying about everything, like every single thing that happened, or I think that she's telling the truth about everything at this point. So it is hard. Like, and I mean, of course, there's part of this was like, there was a sexual abuse component to it as a kid that she claimed, that who knows if that's true or not.
But her dad even said some weird stuff, dude. He did say some weird stuff.
He did say some weird stuff, but I actually thought about that. Even it's not so weird if you don't know the like if you don't know that part, then you would hear it and be like, oh, it's a little weird, but you wouldn't really think much about it. But knowing that he was accused of sexual assault, so if I was a betting man, and which I am, but if I had to put money,
I was a betting man, okay, I am a betting man, okay.
I would bet. I would also bet that her dad did it, but I would say by like a 55-45 thing. I also think that she could have done all of it. And there's so many weird things about it. The thing that still bothers me the most about her is the month that she just let go by, knowing that her child was probably dead. I mean, she's not an idiot. She knew what happened, and maybe it's alive, but like her child wasn't breathing, and she just didn't say anything. And that is really hard for me, especially knowing all the things that her dad did. She knew that she couldn't trust him. So that is the one thing that doesn't allow me to believe her 100%.
I know. I do agree with that. The month, the 31 days, the tattoo of her, get her little living the life tattoo, that all of those things bother me. But then the stuff about the dad that bothers me is the fact that he did abuse Casey, if she's telling the truth. He did abuse her. The way that Kaylee's body was found was the same way that he wrapped and buried their dead pets. It was the exact same manner, the bag and the duct tape and the buried in the exact same spot. That bothers me a lot. That
was the one that bothered me the most, I think. Actually, I think that was more because, like, again, it's all he said, she said at that point. But somebody else claimed that he buried the pet's body like that, right?
Her brother.
Her brother, yeah. So that was the thing that made me that he's at least at minimum involved.
And then years later, when he got in that car accident and went on CNN to talk about it, and he said, I just want to apologize to her for all of the things that I did. I'm like, dude, you just had a brain injury and now stuff's just coming out of your mouth. Like something's not right here in the way he jumped from side to side, from the police's side to her side. I'm going to testify for you. I'm going to testify for them. I think he's shifty and I don't trust him.
Well, there's no doubt. I mean, I don't say this lately. There's no doubt he's a bad man. I mean, he was cheating on his wife while they were trying to find her with like somebody help. I mean, he changed his side every 5 minutes, which is like a horrible thing. He would say one thing like, oh, I think she's innocent, and then tell the grand jury that he thinks she's guilty. He is not a good guy. And I tend to believe that he probably did sexually assault her. I don't know for a fact, but like,
I believe her. I do believe her on that.
It's like I had some real issues with her, but with everything I saw, it's hard for me not to believe. Again, I don't know. And all this is just, it's hearsay. It's like, who is more, like, who comes off better in this documentary that, if you're being honest, was clearly meant to make her look innocent? It was.
Well, because they even presented that new evidence, or the evidence that the guy friend who was her boyfriend's roommate that he had not heard before. And he was like, wait a second, I need a minute to process this. Like they were trying to make her look good in his eyes. And he was like, I need a minute to process this. So that is the goal of the documentary. But I will say, I feel like you and I are pretty good at sussing through media narrative and media manipulation and things like that. And just based on hearing, I was like taking notes, dog, based on just hearing like the facts of the case that I didn't know before. I think it was the dad, George Anthony.
It's always important with any of these things to realize that there's a narrative. Even making a murder, a great thing. That was clear to show that they were innocent. All of these, most of the true crime things have this idea that they want to make the person look innocent. I'm sure there's some that
more
don't.
Guilty. The Aaron Hernandez thing, they wanted to make him look terrible.
Sure, but there's always an agenda, and nobody's really doing these, with maybe a few exceptions, to try to get to the bottom. It's because, and maybe I think Serial might be the closest one to somebody.
Serial was, yeah.
I think there's still bias there, but maybe less so. But it's funny, 'cause I just listened to I listened to another true crime podcast, which you would love. Me and Kira found it. It's new and it's fantastic.
What's it called?
I forget what it's called, but the same guy from the Casey Anthony one that she lives with is in that one. He goes to a jail cell to talk to this. It's this crazy story in Florida, in kind of the same area, where this guy's wife was basically found dead by the side of the road in a sewer, and they put this guy in jail, and he's still in jail, even though there's about 100% chance he didn't do it.
Whoa, I'm gonna have to listen to that. Well, we have 3 weeks until the Murtaugh Murders podcast goes live at trial for Alec Murdaugh. If you're a true crime person, like we are, I'm on the edge of my seat. I will be having court TV on all day when Alec Murdaugh goes to his trial in 3 weeks. Can't wait for that. This has turned into a sports and true crime podcast, and also like comparing the Congress to The Bachelor, which I love. Mark, any final thoughts before we sign off?
No, I got a long trip to Florida on Saturday. We'll be driving down, so I will be listening to another new true crime podcast. So if you have any suggestions, I've listened to most of them that you probably have, but if you have any kind of sneaky ones that aren't as popular, let me know, and I will
send you a list, because I just recently found out that at Jacksonville State University, which is where my parents went to college, one of their professors in criminology does a podcast, and he's been interviewed on mainstream news. He does a podcast that's a very big deal, where he talks about criminology and true crime. So I will send that to you. It's one of my favorites. But yeah, if you guys have any hot takes, let us know. We'd love to talk about your true crime hot takes. Mark, safe travels as you travel on Saturday. Next time we record this podcast, Mark will be recording from sunny Florida on the 38 Panhandle. Again, thank you for listening to Decaf. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Tell your friends, share it with your family. We love to get to know them on the podcast as well. Have a great week. This has been Decaf.